At 8:15 on August 17, 1943, Captain J. Ziemer pushed the throttles forward on his B-17E Flying Fortress, watching four Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters close from the rear at 25,000 feet over Bougainville. The Zeros were diving at 350 miles per hour. The B-17E Flying Fortress was supposed to do 317 miles per hour maximum, but the four Wright R-1820 Cyclone engines under Ziemer's control were not standard Wright R-1820s. They had been modified by his crew over 3 months of completely unauthorized nighttime work in a maintenance hangar at Port Moresby. Supercharger boost pressure increased from the factory specification of 42 inches of mercury to 52 inches. Fuel mixture enriched from 14.7 to 1 air-to-fuel ratio to 12:1. Engine RPM limits raised from 2,300 to 2,500. Ignition timing advanced 5 degrees beyond manufacturer recommendations. The cumulative modifications produced approximately 1,380 horsepower per engine instead of the standard factory-rated 1,200 horsepower. Total power increase across 4 engines, 720 additional horsepower. Enough to push the fully loaded bomber to 340 miles per hour in level flight at altitude. Faster than the Mitsubishi A-6M0s chasing him believed any B-17 could possibly fly. The Japanese pilots diving toward Ziemer's bomber had absolutely no idea what they were about to encounter. If you want to see how this completely rogue engine modification saved one of the war's most desperate reconnaissance missions and earned 2 Medals of Honor, please hit that like button. Every like helps this story reach more viewers. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Back to Ziemer and the mission that should have killed everyone aboard Old 666. The Boeing B-17E Flying Fortress was designed between 1938 and 1941 as a high-altitude strategic bomber. The aircraft's design philosophy emphasized durability, defensive armament, and formation flying capabilities. 4 Wright R-1820 Cyclone 9-cylinder radial engines. Each engine was conservatively rated at 1,200 horsepower for continuous military power settings. Maximum speed 317 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Service ceiling 36,600 feet. Combat radius approximately 1,100 miles with standard fuel load. Defensive armament consisted of 13.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns positioned in nose, dorsal turret, ventral positions, waist positions, and tail. The aircraft was specifically designed to survive through mutual defensive fire from formation members. Individual B-17s flying alone were vulnerable. Slow compared to Japanese fighters. Heavy and difficult to maneuver. Easy targets for coordinated fighter attacks. Captain J. Ziemer did not fly in formations. He had never flown in a formation during his entire Pacific combat tour. Ziemer flew alone, always alone. Ziemer was 25 years old in August 1943. Massachusetts Institute of Technology Engineering graduate. Degree in aeronautical engineering completed in 1940. Joined the United States Army Air Forces in October 1940 before Pearl Harbor. Initial pilot training at Kelly Field, Texas. Advanced training at Ellington Field. B-17 heavy bomber transition training in early 1941. Deployed to the Pacific Theater in February 1942 as part of the 43rd Bombardment Group's 65th Squadron. Stationed initially at Port Moresby, New Guinea. By mid-1942, after 6 months of combat operations, Ziemer had developed a significant problem with his command structure. He was an excellent pilot, superb navigator with mathematical precision, competent bombardier who understood ballistics and trajectory calculations. But he was absolutely not a formation commander. Squadron commanders did not trust him to lead bomber formations. Formation flying required discipline, required following orders without question, required subordinating individual judgment to collective tactics. Ziemer questioned everything, challenged tactical decisions, argued with superior officers about mission planning. His squadron commander eventually relegated Ziemer to photo reconnaissance missions, solo flights over Japanese-held territory, photograph enemy positions, map coastal defenses, document airfield construction, return alive if possible. Photo reconnaissance was the most dangerous mission profile in the Southwest Pacific Theater. Solo bombers received no mutual defensive support, no concentrated formation firepower. Japanese fighters could attack without facing the crossfire from adjacent bombers that made formation attacks so hazardous. The tactical mathematics were brutal and undeniable. One B-17 with 13 machine guns and approximately 6,000 rounds of ammunition total versus 6 Japanese fighters, each carrying 2 20mm cannons and 2 or 3 7.7mm machine guns. The bomber would lose that engagement every time, unless the bomber could somehow outrun the pursuing fighters, or outclimb them beyond their service ceiling, or outmaneuver them long enough to escape back to friendly territory. Standard factory specification B-17E bombers could not accomplish any of those tactical objectives against Japanese A-6M0 fighters. The Zero was faster in level flight, faster in climbs, more maneuverable in turns. Photo reconnaissance B-17S were being systematically shot down at completely unsustainable attrition rates throughout 1942 and early 1943. Ziemer desperately needed some kind of tactical edge. In April 1943, Ziemer was assigned a severely war-weary B-17E bomber that had already accumulated 48 combat missions over Japanese targets. The airframe had accumulated substantial fatigue damage, multiple patches on the fuselage from previous battle damage. The engines were worn significantly beyond their recommended service intervals. Cylinder compressions were marginal. Oil consumption was excessive. Standard operating procedure mandated retiring such aircraft from combat operations. Strip them for spare parts. Use the engines in less demanding training roles stateside. Ziemer formally requested assignment of this specific worn-out bomber for continued photo reconnaissance duty. His request was immediately approved. Nobody else wanted the fatigued aircraft. The bomber would probably fall apart during the next combat mission anyway. Ziemer could have it. Fly it until catastrophic structural failure or engine failure killed the crew, which would almost certainly happen soon given the aircraft's condition. Ziemer assembled his crew entirely from volunteers, men who could not secure regular crew assignments through normal channels. Men with various disciplinary problems that made standard squadron commanders reluctant to accept them. Technical Sergeant Forrest Dillman served as engineer and bombardier. Previously busted from commissioned officer rank to enlisted rank for repeated fighting incidents. Staff Sergeant Joseph Sarnowski served as bombardier. Failed out of officer candidate school for poor military discipline and insubordination. Staff Sergeant George Kendrick served as waist gunner. Transferred between 3 different squadrons for refusing direct orders he considered tactically unsound. The crew was exclusively composed of misfits and troublemakers. They called themselves the Eager Beavers. Ironic name given their collective reputation for laziness regarding garrison duties and military protocol. They called their assigned aircraft Old 666. The bomber's official military serial number was 41-2666. The crew shortened it to just the last digits. The numbers seemed darkly appropriate. The aircraft appeared cursed. Multiple previous crews had been shot up badly flying this particular bomber. The current crew was composed of cursed men assigned to fly cursed missions into cursed Japanese-held territory. The name Old 666 stuck immediately. Ziemer's crew began systematically modifying old 666 during May 1943. Every modification was completely unauthorized. Zero official approval from Squadron Command. Zero engineering safety reviews from Boeing or Wright Aeronautical. Zero compatibility testing. Just a collection of experienced mechanics and one pilot with a legitimate aeronautical engineering degree from MIT, making incremental changes they collectively believed would marginally improve their survival probability. The first category of modifications addressed defensive armament. Standard factory B-17E configuration mounted 13.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns. Ziemer's crew methodically added 6 more guns over 3 weeks. Twin synchronized guns installed in the nose compartment. Twin guns mounted in the radio operator's compartment with custom fabricated mounts. Single guns added in new waist positions with overlapping fields of fire. Twin guns installed in a completely custom belly turret, fabricated entirely from salvaged parts recovered from crashed B-17S total armament after modifications. 19.50 caliber Browning M2 machine guns. Approximately 8,000 rounds of ammunition carried. The aircraft had genuinely become a flying fortress in more than just symbolic name. But additional defensive guns alone would not solve the fundamental tactical problem. The bomber remained slow relative to Japanese fighters, still vulnerable during the extended approach routes to target areas, still vulnerable during withdrawal back to friendly bases. Ziemer needed significantly more speed. He needed his worn-out engines to produce substantially more power. The Wright R-1820 Cyclone was fundamentally a reliable, conservative engine design, deliberately built for long-term endurance rather than maximum instantaneous performance. But Ziemer understood from his engineering education that the engine design incorporated substantial performance reserves. The supercharger could definitely produce more boost pressure than factory specifications allowed. The fuel mixture could be enriched beyond the lean cruise settings. The RPM limits were artificially constrained low for reliability rather than set at true mechanical limits. Increase all those operational parameters simultaneously, and the engine would produce significantly more power. For some period of time, until something critical broke from the increased stress. The first engine modification targeted the supercharger boost pressure. Standard factory specification. Boost pressure was 42 inches of mercury at maximum military power. Ziemer's crew carefully adjusted the supercharger wastegate mechanism to allow 52 inches of mercury boost. 10 additional inches of boost pressure represented approximately 24% more air being forced into each cylinder. More air intake meant proportionally more fuel could be burned per combustion cycle. More fuel combustion directly translated to more power output. The physical modification was deceptively simple. Just one careful adjustment to the wastegate spring tension using a special wrench. But the thermodynamic consequences were significant and potentially dangerous. Higher boost pressure created substantially higher cylinder temperatures during combustion. Higher temperatures dramatically increased the risk of detonation. Detonation meant spontaneous, uncontrolled combustion. Detonation would destroy pistons, crack cylinder heads, seize the engine completely within seconds. To prevent catastrophic detonation from the increased boost pressure, Ziemer's crew simultaneously modified the fuel mixture ratio. Standard cruise mixture was 14.7 parts air to 1 part fuel by mass, the stoichiometric ratio for complete combustion. Maximum thermal efficiency, minimum fuel consumption per horsepower produced. Ziemer's crew enriched the mixture significantly to 12 parts air to 1 part fuel. Much richer mixture meant excess fuel in each cylinder beyond what could completely combust. That excess unburned fuel absorbed substantial heat during the power stroke. Cooler cylinder temperatures meant dramatically reduced detonation risk even with the higher boost pressure. The modification worked exactly as intended, but fuel consumption increased approximately 23%. Range decreased proportionally. Mission planning became absolutely critical. Every single gallon of fuel capacity mattered. Running out of fuel 50 miles from base meant death just as certainly as Japanese fighters. The third major engine modification increased maximum RPM limits. Standard factory maximum continuous RPM was 2,300. Zeemer's crew carefully adjusted the propeller governor mechanisms to permit 2,500 RPM. Higher RPM meant more power strokes per minute per cylinder. More power strokes directly meant more total power output. The modification added approximately 50 additional horsepower per engine just from the RPM increase alone. But higher RPM also meant proportionally higher mechanical stresses throughout the entire engine. Connecting rods experienced greater centrifugal loads. Crankshafts experienced greater torsional stress. Main bearings wore faster from the increased loads. The engines absolutely would not last as long before requiring major overhaul. But Zeemer was not planning for long-term engine reliability and longevity. He was planning exclusively to survive the next reconnaissance mission, and the mission after that, for as long as the engines held together. The fourth and final engine modification advanced the ignition timing. Standard factory timing was set conservatively to ensure complete combustion across a wide range of operating conditions and fuel qualities. Zeemer's crew advanced the timing by exactly 5 degrees. Earlier ignition meant the air-fuel mixture began burning earlier in the compression stroke. More complete combustion meant more power extracted from each power stroke. But advanced timing also increased peak cylinder pressures. Increased pressures meant increased stress on every engine component. Too much advance would cause detonation. Zeemer's crew calculated the advance carefully based on the boost pressure and mixture ratio changes. 5 degrees provided measurable power increase without triggering detonation. The cumulative effect of all 4 modifications increased each engine's power output from the factory-rated 1,200 horsepower to approximately 1,380 horsepower at 25,000 feet. 4 engines meant total power increase of exactly 720 additional horsepower. 60% more power than adding another complete engine. The bomber's performance characteristics changed dramatically and measurably. Maximum speed increased from factory specification 317 miles per hour to approximately 340 miles per hour at 25,000 feet during initial test flights. Rate of climb increased from 900 feet per minute to 1,150 feet per minute. Service ceiling increased from 36,600 feet to approximately 38,500 feet. Old 666 had genuinely become the fastest B-17 flying fortress in the entire Pacific theater. Probably the fastest B-17 anywhere in the world. The modifications were that effective. But the modifications created substantial new operational problems and maintenance challenges. The engines ran consistently hotter across all operating regimes. Cylinder head temperatures averaged 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit higher than standard engines. Oil consumption increased dramatically. The engines consumed approximately 1 quart of oil per flight hour instead of the standard 1 quart every 3 hours. Spark plugs fouled much more frequently from the rich fuel mixture. The high boost, rich mixture, high RPM combination created excessive carbon deposits that dramatically shortened spark plug operational life. Zeemer's crew changed spark plugs every 10 flight hours instead of the standard 50-hour interval. Maintenance workload increased by approximately 400%, but the crew unanimously accepted the additional maintenance burden. Better to work harder on the ground than die in the air from insufficient performance. The engine modifications were deliberately kept completely secret from higher command. Zimmer understood perfectly that squadron commanders would never approve unauthorized engine modifications. Safety regulations explicitly prohibited field modifications to engine operating parameters. Maintenance manuals from both Boeing and Wright Aeronautical specifically forbade adjustments beyond factory specifications. Wright Aeronautical Corporation would have immediately voided all engine warranties if corporate engineers had discovered the modifications. Better to maintain complete operational security. Fly the reconnaissance missions. Survive through superior performance. Let mission results speak for themselves without revealing the source of the performance advantage. Between May and early August 1943, Old 666 completed exactly 17 photo reconnaissance missions over various Japanese-held territories. Every single mission encountered Japanese fighters. Every mission resulted in air-to-air combat. 0 fighters destroyed, 7 confirmed. 0 fighters probable, 4. 0 fighters damaged, 9. Old 666 damage sustained, 0 hits. The modified bomber was winning decisively. On August 16, 1943, Zimmer received operational orders for an extremely high-priority reconnaissance mission to Buouah Island. The mission was considered absolutely critical for upcoming Allied offensive operations. Allied forces were actively planning a major amphibious invasion of Bougainville Island. Military intelligence desperately needed current detailed photographs of Japanese defensive positions on Buouah Island, located immediately north of Bougainville. No previous photo reconnaissance aircraft had successfully photographed Buouah and returned. Every single previous attempt had been intercepted by coordinated Japanese fighter attacks. The fighter interceptors came from multiple airfields surrounding the target area. Buouah Island itself hosted a significant Japanese fighter base. Rabaul, located 200 miles south, maintained the largest concentrated Japanese air base in the entire Southwest Pacific region, with over 300 aircraft. Any bomber approaching Buouah faced inevitably coordinated fighter attacks from multiple directions with overwhelming numerical superiority. The mission was universally considered suicide. Zimmer volunteered immediately without hesitation. Old 666 departed Port Moresby precisely at 4 o'clock on August 17, 1943. The planned route was deliberately indirect to maximize surprise. Zimmer intended to approach Buouah from the east, from over empty ocean. Japanese radar coverage was significantly weaker over water compared to land approaches. Fighter interceptors might not detect the approaching bomber until Old 666 was already over the target area. That tactical advantage would provide perhaps 10 to 12 minutes to complete photography and begin escape before coordinated fighter attacks developed. Probably insufficient time, but marginally better than approaching from the predictable southern direction and getting intercepted 50 miles from target. The flight from Port Moresby to Buouah required 3 hours at cruise power settings. Old 666 maintained 25,000 feet altitude using the modified engine parameters. Boost pressure at 50 inches mercury. Fuel mixture slightly rich. Engine RPM at 2,400. All 4 engines ran smoothly despite the non-standard settings. Oil temperatures were elevated but stable within acceptable ranges. Cylinder head temperatures were in the yellow caution range. Marginally acceptable but requiring constant monitoring. The bomber was performing exactly as Zimmer had mathematically calculated during mission planning. At exactly 7 o'clock, Buouah Island appeared distinctly visible on the eastern horizon. Zimmer began his planned photo run at 7:12. Old 666 flew perfectly straight and level at 25,000 feet. The mapping cameras were running continuously. All gunners were intensely watching for fighters. Everyone aboard expected company very soon. The first Japanese fighters appeared at exactly 7:17. 6 Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters climbing aggressively from Buouah airfield below. The Zeros were currently at 18,000 feet and climbing rapidly. Time to intercept altitude approximately 4 to 5 minutes. Zimmer maintained precise course and altitude. The critical photo run required 8 more minutes of straight and level flight. He would complete the entire mission regardless of fighters, then run at maximum speed. The climbing Zeros reached 23,000 feet at 7:21, still climbing toward intercept altitude. Zimmer's tail gunner, Sergeant J. Johnston, calmly called out diminishing range estimates. 3,000 yards, 2,500 yards, 2,000 yards. The Zeros were closing steadily. Zimmer held unwavering course. The mapping cameras were still running. At precisely 7:23, the photo run was complete. Every required frame exposed. Mission photography accomplished. Zimmer immediately turned Old 666 eastward toward open ocean, away from Buouah Island, away from Rabaul's massive fighter base, toward relative safety 500 miles distant. The 6 Zeros turned simultaneously, matching his course. The Japanese fighters were now 1,200 yards behind and closing. Maximum speed pursuit. The Zeros could achieve approximately 350 miles per hour at 25,000 feet altitude. Old 666 was currently doing 340 miles per hour. The fighters were gaining slowly, but gaining. In approximately 4 to 5 minutes, they would reach effective gun range. Zimmer needed more speed immediately. Zimmer smoothly pushed all 4 throttles to maximum available power. Boost pressure instantly increased to 54 inches mercury, beyond even the modified operational limits, beyond any safety margins. The engines screamed audibly even through the heavy sound insulation. Cylinder head temperatures climbed rapidly into the red danger zone. Oil pressure fluctuated erratically, but the airspeed increased exactly as required. 345 miles per hour, 348 miles per hour, 352 miles per hour. Old 666 was now actually matching and slightly exceeding the pursuing Zero's maximum speed. The distance held steady at 1,100 yards, not closing, not opening. Perfect stalemate. But stalemate tactically favored the bomber. The Zeros carried limited fuel. They could not pursue indefinitely at maximum power. Zimmer just needed to maintain this speed long enough for the Japanese fighters to reach their fuel limits and break off pursuit. Then additional fighters appeared from a completely different direction. 4 fresh Zeros climbing rapidly from below and behind. These were reinforcements scrambled from a different airfield. Full internal fuel. The new fighters were currently at 20,000 feet and climbing aggressively. They would reach intercept altitude in approximately 2 to 3 minutes. Zimmer faced an impossible tactical problem. He was already at maximum sustainable speed, could not go faster without catastrophic engine failure, could not climb without losing critical airspeed, could not turn without losing altitude and exposing vulnerable aspects. The only remaining option was to maintain current course and speed and fight. Old 666's 19.50 caliber machine guns would have to somehow hold off 10 Japanese fighters simultaneously. The tactical mathematics were absolutely terrible, but the crew had absolutely no other choice. The first Zero from the new group attacked at exactly 7:28, classic head-on attack pass. Combined closing speed approximately 700 miles per hour. The Zero's two 20mm Type 99 cannons and two 7.7mm Type 97 machine guns opened fire simultaneously with Old 666's nose-mounted guns. Brilliant tracer rounds filled the entire space between rapidly converging aircraft. The Zero's 20mm cannon shells impacted Old 666's left wing route. The entire bomber shuddered violently from the impacts. Metal fragments flew. The Zero flashed past at incredible relative velocity, gone in less than 1 second. Zimmer maintained precise course. Immediate damage assessment. Left wing structurally damaged. Fuel leak developing from number 2 engine nacelle. Aircraft still flyable. Controls still responsive. The second Zero attacked from 4 o'clock high. Steep diving attack from above. The bomber's top turret gunner engaged immediately. The twin .50 caliber guns fired combined 800 rounds per minute. Tracer rounds arced toward the diving Zero. The Japanese pilot observed the defensive fire and pulled out of his dive prematurely. No hits scored on the bomber. The Zero climbed away to reposition. Third Zero attacked from 7 o'clock level. Beam attack. The port waist gunner engaged with sustained fire. The Zero took multiple hits in the left wing route. The fighter immediately rolled away, trailing dark smoke. 1 probable kill. 9 fighters remaining in the engagement. If this story moved you the way it moved us, do me a favor. Hit that like button. Every single like tells YouTube to show this story to more people. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We are rescuing forgotten stories from dusty archives every single day. Stories about unauthorized engine modifications that saved lives. Real crews, real engineering, real courage. Drop a comment right now and tell us where you are watching from. You are not just a viewer. You are part of keeping these memories alive. Thank you for making sure these stories do not disappear into silence.